good afternoon and welcome to City Club of Portland Friday Forum. City Club is where we bring civic-minded people together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and play. I'm KERVIN, President of City Club, and I would like to welcome members and guests alike, those of you who join us today at the Sentinel, and those of you listening on OPB radio or watching on Portland Community Media. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners ensures we put on the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partner, Oregon Business Magazine. Our current Friday Forum sponsors are AARP, Barron Liebman, Iberdrola Renewables, Perkins Coie, Portland General Electric, and Providence Health and Services. I also want to recognize today's co-presenters, Business for Culture and the Arts, Confluence Project, Oregon Archaeological Society, Pacific Northwest College of Art, Portland Art Museum, and Regional Arts and Culture Council. We are grateful for your support and commitment to City Club's mission. Please join me in a warm round of applause for all of them. Next week, the day after Thanksgiving, we will not hold a Friday Forum. The following week, the Children's Dental Health Task Force will release a report about the alternatives to community water fluoridation in Multnomah County, and we will host a forum on the report that Friday, December 5th. Our next civic drinks will be held at Ex Novo, the new nonprofit brewery in North Portland. We partnered with Oregon Humanities to bring together organizations who are making Portland a more equitable place to live, work, and play. You can learn more about City Club events, purchase tickets, and become a member on our website, PDXCITYCLUB.org. And now for a special announcement. Today is Jennifer Thompson's last Friday Forum as a City Club staffer, and I want to take a moment to thank her for all the work she's done while at City Club. Under her leadership and guidance, City Club has the highest retention rate of any city club in the nation, and we've grown over 47% in the last 2 years. Please make sure to find Jennifer on your way out and give her your best wishes as she moves on to a different job adventure. And Jennifer, we will miss you at City Club of Portland. And now for a short pitch for our annual fund. Because we all love Portland, we need to make it better for all Portlanders. Here at City Club, membership, as we just mentioned, event attendance, the number of research projects completed, the visibility and impact of City Club is up and increasing. We are becoming a younger, more racially diverse organization focused on serving all of Portland. And there's still much to be done. Today, we are asking for your support, $25, $50, $100, or whatever you can give so that we can build a club for every Portlander. You will find donation envelopes at your tables. Please fill one out and give it to a City Club staff member or associate. And thank you very much for your support. As always, we will be live tweeting today's program. You can follow along and join the conversation using the hashtag PDXCityClub. I will facilitate a Q&A session with the audience and Maya Lin at the end of today's program. Members, please come to the microphone to ask your question. For all audience members, please locate the index cards on the center of your tables and write your questions on them during the forum. Hold your cards up high and City Club staff will collect them prior to the start of Q&A. And one final note, today's audio and visual presentation will be available on our website. So now I'd like to introduce a featured guest, Thomas Lauderdale. So instead of running for political office, Lauderdale founded the little orchestra called Pink Martini, you may have heard of it, in 1994 to play political fundraisers for progressive causes such as civil rights, the environment, affordable housing, and public broadcasting. For a donation to City Club's annual fund, mentioned earlier, between $500 and $999, you and a friend will attend a sing-along celebration of Portland's 169th birthday, hosted by pianist Thomas Lauderdale of Pink Martini at his recently restored historic downtown loft. Participants will enjoy local salt and straw ice cream, Stumptown coffee, and drinks. And now let's welcome Thomas Lauderdale. Thank you.
Hello. So 13 years ago, Maya Lin, who built the Vietnam War Memorial in DC and has been doing all kinds of projects around the world that are incredible, was commissioned by Native American tribes to commemorate the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark expedition of 1804 to 6 from the perspective of the Native American and the landscape that has changed. At 6 different sites along the Columbia River Basin from the Idaho border to Cape Disappointment, she's been building public art installations as well as park restorations. And the last of these 6 projects is just getting underway at Celilo Falls, which was for 10,000 years the most continuously inhabited settlement in North America. The falls themselves ran at a more furious pace than Niagara Falls, and were covered in 8 hours on the morning of March 10th, 1957. In 8 hours, it was covered. So this project is such an incredible project which spans 438 miles, making it the largest public art installation in America, and in my estimation, or in my opinion, it's the most important. I've been, there have been a couple of people who have really championed this. From the very beginning, Mary Bishop has been spearheading and been a driving force. She and Jane Jacobson, who have built all kinds of sort of incredible partnerships with the tribes, with politicians, with the. It goes on and on and on. It's kind of incredible what they've done over these past 13 years, and today is a very we're about to break ground at Celilo, and today is a very exciting. I'm so excited to announce that. In the last year and a half, I've become friends with Jordan Schnitzer, and he's just such an extraordinary person. I think in terms of giving and being committed and giving back to his community, there are very few people in his generation who are doing anything close to what he's doing. He really leads the pack, and I've seen this sort of incredibly tender, wonderful side. We're in the end, we're all in the same boat, and I just really appreciate his kindness, and so I'm so excited to announce that today that that Arlene Schnitzer, in honor of her son Jordan, has just committed $1 million. So here's the statement. So this is a statement from the Schnitzer family. Our family has always felt it's important to pay homage to the history and culture of our regions. The Confluence Project educates and honors the Native American people who lived on this land, fished the rivers, and have been stewards of the grandeur of the Pacific Northwest. Lewis and Clark and other settlers came to this land and helped build our communities that we enjoy today. The Confluence Project tells this story, and our family wants to help support this project so that other families will understand our heritage for generations to come. Thank you, Jordan Schnitzer. Thank you, Arlene Schnitzer. And please welcome to the stage the incredible Maya Lin.
Wow, thank you. It's really good to be here. Happy almost Thanksgiving. Why is a boat building up on the screen? I'm going to show you a couple of my projects because I see my life as a tripod: art, architecture, and the memorials. The fourth and the fifth memorials are Confluence and what is missing. And you know, my pieces have always balanced between the disciplines of art and architecture, but I do think the memorials are a middle ground. They have a functionality, but their function is more symbolic. So in a way, they're a complete merger. But one of the reasons I chose to start with some of the architecture is, and all these projects were done at the same time I've been working on Confluence. And this is the chapel for the Children's Defense Fund in Clinton, Tennessee. And after 9/11, probably like a lot of us, I was just struck dumb. I think we were all pretty taken aback by what happened in 9/11. And there were two projects that helped me get back on my kind of emotional feet. One was Confluence, and the other one was working with the Children's Defense Fund and Marian Wright Edelman. So these projects are important to me because I started them at probably a point where we were all pretty hurt and pretty, in a way, I didn't know where to go. So this is for the Children's Defense Fund at Haley Farm, Alex Haley's former estate. Every single building on the farm was a single-story log cabin. So what could I, kind of a die-hard modernist, a little on the warm side, do in response to log cabins? The motto for the Children's Defense Fund was, "Dear Lord, my boat, the sea is so large and my boat is so small." And I took the imagery of a boat as a barn to create this interfaith chapel. Now, everything at the site is of small scale, but twice a year for graduations and conferences, they needed double the capacity. So oftentimes in my architecture, I'll build outdoor rooms. So that middle space between the concrete block and the wood boat form has roller furlings, and so you can double the needs of your building while maintaining a small footprint. You can also connect people so that they can sit outside, and the barn doors literally open up, and you can see what's going on inside. Coupled with that, I had done another building for the Children's Defense Fund with Marian Wright Edelman, and it was a barn. Now, I love using time in my work. I never thought I could incorporate time in my architectural work. So this is one old, one new. I fell in love with this 1870s Tennessee hay barn. Maybe it was in a floodplain, so they had to jack up the barn, but literally, what could I do again? I left the building old on the outside and slipped a modernist skin inside. And that's the reading room. I'm very committed and always have been to sustainable materials, maximizing daylight, reducing energy, use of a building. Something I just completed, sort of slightly different. It's a little bit of an in-between piece between architecture and art. Well, actually, no, before that, I also helped out, and I'm on the board of the Museum of Chinese in America, which we took an old machinery factory in downtown Manhattan and created this museum that teaches the history of Chinese Americans in this country. And again, I love using time, which is something that's played out through all my work. So the narrative history of Chinese immigrating to this country, you walk around the exhibit, you circle around an inner hidden courtyard, and when you go down to the classrooms, each of those windows reveals a different face of Chinese immigrants to this country. So even though we've come out in waves from the 1850s to the present day, as you go down to the classrooms, you see us as a family, whole, connected through time. Another project, which is going to play very much in Confluence, and especially Celilo, started with another project, a little brush stroke. And I was called in China to do a sculpture, a work, and I created a bell tower. It's Shantou University in southern China, and it's literally the stroke of a brush in sort of a stainless steel with a stone tower holding it up. And the idea was that when a student enters, they ring the bell, and when they graduate, again, 4 years later, they get to ring the bell. And that's how it looks. Balancing that out, I also am equally committed to my art. So here's another use. Again, I was working on this simultaneous in stone. Most of my artwork tries to reveal the natural world around us. And I see myself a little bit like a landscape painter of the 18th or 19th century. It's just that we have many more ways of looking at the world around us, from sonar views of the ocean floor, to satellite views, to microscopic views of our own bone structure. So this little piece is cut out of one piece of marble, and it shows the disappearance of the Arctic ice cap, low mean ice from the 70s to today. So what remains is just the uppermost layer. I've also been very interested in my art in cross sections through the ocean and land together. Think about the topography that we cannot see. There are more mountain ranges underwater. The tallest mountain in the world is not Everest, it's Hawaii. So maybe in art, what I like doing is getting you to almost rethink what you're looking at. And in that one moment, you might take a pause and look at it again. I think the phrase is, try to think like a child. Because when we're kids, we look. And since we've not seen it before, we pay attention. As we get older, we know what we're looking at, and sometimes we stop looking. So perhaps in all my work, it's just a simple idea to get you to rethink what it is that's literally right below our feet. That also manifested itself in 3 circular stone-cut sculptures, the Arctic Circle, the latitude intersecting Manhattan, and then another topographic ring at the equator. And this was just at a show at the Parrish Art Museum. And what's in the background is a pin river, because I am fixated on water and rivers, as you will find out with Confluence. And when I saw this image in the New York Times of Hurricane Sandy's floodplain, I knew I was going to turn it into a pin river drawing. So here's a moment in time that probably existed for less than 12 hours, just the floodplain surge, and the damage it wrought and the memory that we have from it is enormous. So oftentimes in my art, I'm trying to capture these moments, or simply put, I don't know if anyone can guess what this is. What if we could look at a river as a positive? We always think of the land, and if we could see rivers revealed as continuous ecological systems, just to give you a hint, that little void sort of is Manhattan. So this is the Long Island Sound, the Hudson River, as it empties out into the bay, and it's made in cast recycled silver. But I also do outdoor artworks, and many of them now are cut into the earth, and this little image of a repetitive water wave called a Stokes wave I fell in love with, and it turned into the first of the wave fields at the University of Michigan, 10,000 square feet, 100 by 100. The scale of the wave is you could curl up and read a book in a wave. And as an artist, I do work in series, and with my outdoor artworks, I'm playing with scale. So this is the third and last of the wave fields. It's for Storm King Art Center. And what I loved about this piece is it's a brownfield remediation site. So you can see the red lines, which is kind of cut away. This was an empty gravel pit that was formed when they were building the thruway. And Storm King they sealed it to comply with state EPA requirements, and they hid it behind a berm. So I got permission from the state EPA to turn this former pit into the artwork using the berm that formerly hid the pit and turned it into Storm King Wavefield. It's 11 acres, and the idea was, could I make a piece where the waves went over your head? So there's 7 rows, 18 to 20 feet high. You get lost in a wave. Next in that series I just completed this last year was a piece where it started literally as folding a piece of paper. It's called A Fold in a Field. It was in a former degraded pasture land that was completely flooding out in New Zealand for a private collector. Each of the rolls goes 60 feet high. And yet the sheep do like it, which is kind of cute. And I connect these to sculptures that I get to make and form with my staff, because when you're working at the scale of a bulldozer, you definitely want to stay hands-on to your work. So this piece is called Flow. It's made out of FSC certified 2x4s. Or this piece was part of a 3-part series that originated at the Henry Art Gallery. This is 3,000 square feet, and it's very much inspired by the hilly landscape of the Palouse. So all this work I've been doing as I've been working on Confluence, and as Jane Jacobson, the former director of Confluence, and I would drive back and forth across the state of Washington, I fell in love with the hillside of the Palouse, and this piece is directly related to it. So from 2 approaches, it looks like a water wave. From the backside, it looks like a bit of a hill. There were 3 anchoring pieces that gave you 3 very different relationships to the landscape. One you walk on, one you walk through, which is a landscape, a mountainscape near where I summer in Colorado, and you could walk between the stratified layers of the earth. It's called Blue Lake Pass. Or yet I wanted to go as remote to a water landscape, and so this is what I call a wire drawing in space, and it's the southernmost island in the Atlantic Bouvet, but only the top 2 feet of this topographic wire landscape is visible, is Bouvet. The rest is the complex mountainous terrain under the ocean. So oftentimes we pollute what we don't see, what is beyond our grasp. We look at a river, we think about our place along the river. Maybe if someone's polluting upstream, we might think about them, but do we really think about what's going on downstream? So a lot of these works, again, try to connect these extremely important waterways. Or the first permanent wire landscape is at California Academy of Sciences on the Western Terrace. And I took the terrain above and below sea level at the mouth of the San Francisco Bay and turned it into a wire drawing, a wire landscape. So now as you eat lunch, you can actually sit and look at and study the terrain of the San Francisco Bay. The high peak is the 2 headlands, and then Angel Island is sort of in the middle. On the opposite terrace, and now I'll go into the 4th and the 5th of what I would call the memorial series. And for me, memorials are about time, memory, and history. And so the first one starts with an idea. It's called What is Missing? And I'm an incredibly committed environmentalist. I don't know why. My parents don't know why. I started petitioning against steel traps and boycotting the Japanese for whales when I was like 10. I grew up in Athens, Ohio, and I would sit in the I think the A&P parking lot with a petition, and this is southeastern Ohio, so I was sort of a bit of an odd duck. Anyway, I've known for about 30 years now, oops, we slipped a decade, that the 5th of the memorials would focus on the environment. So it's called What is Missing, and it poses a question. What if we could make a memorial that could jump form? What if it could be in permanent and temporary installations? What if it could exist online? What if it could be a book? A lot of what we're doing at Confluence, which is what I'll end with, has informed this piece. I'm just going to give you a walkthrough of it. So this is the first iteration. It's a listening cone. Look familiar. It's the RCA Victor. Listen to the Earth cone. Kids curl up inside and listen to the videos. The BBC, National Geographic, and Cornell Ornithology Labs have been our lead contributors. We've made over 70 1- to 2-minute educational films. You can go to our website, and I'll talk about that in a second. But just to give you an idea, it always starts with an intro. And then these films play every 20 minutes with the intro. And since it's a radio audience, I don't know if I should do a voiceover. The species that have gone extinct, the species that will disappear in our lifetime, the species that we will never know because we destroyed their habitats before we ever knew them. There have been 5 mass extinctions in the history of the planet. The last one was caused by an asteroid the size of Manhattan, hitting the Earth at the speed of 18,000 meters per second. We are witnessing the 6th mass extinction in the planet's history, and the only one to be caused not by a catastrophic event, but by the actions of one single species, mankind. One in 5 mammals, 1 in 3 amphibians, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 4 conifers are known to be threatened with extinction, with human alteration of their habitat the single biggest cause. And then films play in a continuous loop every 20 minutes, rotating out of the 70 films we've made, and we keep adding to them. This is a temporary installation. It's called The Empty Room. You pick up a plate of optic plexi, and you go and you catch the species or habitat. So this has gone to exhibits in China, Copenhagen, throughout the United States. So you get sort of to kind of hold a species and understand about it. Or we just put in for Cornell Ornithology Labs, which holds the greatest sound library in the world of natural sounds, a sound ring that was engineered by Ove Arup, and there are 12 speakers, and we can create sound landscapes. So that is now in their lobby. What is Missing is free as long as you share it. To me, I think of it as water, and it can flow wherever it's invited in. We took over. It's a guerrilla art project. Because it's a volunteer project for me, I tend to surface on Earth Day with a new iteration. So in 2010, we took over the MTV billboard in Times Square, courtesy of the Creative Time, created 5 new videos. But this is what we're faced with, as the video said. 1 in 5 mammals, 1 in 3 amphibians, 1 in 8 birds, 1 in 4 conifers are known to be threatened with extinction, with human alteration of their habitat the single biggest cause. So it's not just the species, it's the habitats they need. But as an artist, I'm trying to get you to think of things that are missing that you don't even realize are missing. So whether it's the scale of species, the abundance of species, the ability of animals to migrate freely. One of the things that struck me, the sound of once common songbirds in our backyards are in a 30 to 70% decline. So literally the sounds we've heard, those landscapes from our childhood, they're missing. So can I reveal things? How can we protect something if we don't even realize it's gone or that it's being threatened? So this the scale of species. So for instance, we're finding and we're mining the ecological history of the planet and putting it online. Atlantic cod were bigger than a man in the 1890s, and with every successive generation, we fished it out, and it's gotten smaller and smaller. But do we even realize how big they were? Because scientists refer to it as shifting baselines. Jared Diamond refers to it as landscape amnesia. We don't remember. So part of what is missing is to get you to understand how much has been changing in just our own lifetimes, let alone our parents' or our grandparents' generation. So these are buffalo heads, skulls. So the website acts as a nexus for the project, and it will have, it's wonky, I warn you, go on it, do not go on it by iPad. It's website only, but by Christmas time it'll switch over. It shows an ecological history of the planet, right now past the map of memory. Please give us a memory, something you've personally witnessed diminish. But it's also got a map of the present. We've linked to over 40 environmental groups, and we showcase what they're doing. You can play with it, though, now. It's kind of, again, a wonky site. You can look at all these stories geolocated, or you can toggle view and time, and all those stories jump up a timeline, and then you can sort the timeline. If you want to look at ecological successes or conservation stories or disasters or single species, you can play and find things. There are things called timelines, though I kind of affectionately refer to them as wormholes, where we've gone into a deeper history of major waterways in major cities. So we're growing one right now of the Columbia River and of Celilo, and we'd love your stories. It's kind of Confluence and What Is Missing have sort of merged, and when you study these histories, oftentimes you see the same arc, where we went to a place because it was so vibrant and abundant. We polluted it, we degraded it, but then with legislation, these areas are beginning to come back. So in the end, nature is resilient, and if we give it a chance, we can help restore nature. These are some of the things we found. In New York Harbor, from Adrian van der Donck in 1650, the wild turkeys weighed 40 pounds. The lobsters were 6 feet long, and the oysters measured 12 inches. Or sturgeon were so plentiful, boats had to avoid colliding with them, and they were nicknamed Albany beef. And then people's memories, this is one I love, dining on the ice in Narragansett Bay in the 70s, and I don't think it's frozen over since that point. So if you have a photograph, please enter it because it makes it much more personal. This is someone sending in an image of fireflies from South Korea. Lost the abundance of fireflies everywhere, no stars either, and we need the fireflies more than ever now, but they aren't here. They leave the polluted places before we do. Bring the light back. I've also started to link with school groups. This is the Dalton School, where they did a whole study with their history department, their art department, and their science department, and they went to both cities around the world as well as their own hometowns. As well as we've went to 40 environmental groups, from Nature Conservancy to the WWF, just sharing what they're doing. I just believed we needed to be able to see the environmental movement as a whole and look at all the good work that's going on. The key aspect of missing that I'm working on now is called Greenprint, and it looks at what we can each do in our everyday lives, but it also looks at the future and plausible future scenarios that will balance our needs with the needs of the planet. I'll be working on it for the next 2 to 3 years, but yes, it might be the last memorial I ever work on, but I'll be donating to it for the rest of my life. So if the world consumed like Americans, we would need 5 planets. So you could ask it a different way. How many Americans could live on the planet? So Greenprint will be made up of 4 different elements: what you can do, what each one of us can do today, from what we eat to what we buy to what we wear. The Save the Planet diet, couldn't resist. lose 10 tons, 10 pounds, add 10 years to your life, and save the planet too. What if, which is where I as an artist might be able to pose a question and ask it in a different way, and then something more technical, which will be called mapping the future, which will actually work with experts and rethink our human footprint in relation to the natural world. So Greenprint will look at how we live, where we live, and what we spend our money on. It will shrink our agricultural footprint, our urban and suburban footprint. It will examine our industrial footprint and look at best case practices around the world. It's a manual for living and a vision of a sustainable future. So these are some of the things. What if we offset our entire carbon footprint by growing a forest? What if we subsidize good practices rather than bad ones? What if we sprawled up and minimized our urban, suburban, and agricultural footprint? What could the world look like? So here's what an artist can do. Oops, that would be me. Sorry. It's my daughter, hold on. My husband's traveling, as am I. There's a sitter. They're 15 and 17, but I have to keep my phone on, sorry. So what if we all lived at the population density of Manhattan? How much space do 7 billion people take up? Take a guess? State of Colorado. So is this a question just of population, or is this really a question of land use and resource consumption? I would argue, and as we go to Confluence, you'll see parking lots, suburban sprawl. I don't think we like it. I think it's just happened, and we've let it happen. We probably spend more time wondering where we're going to eat for dinner than thinking about what our kids are going to get for dinner and what the world is going to look like if we don't start thinking about it. So it's not like everyone come to Colorado. 50% of us live in our cities. By 2050, 75% of us will. Cities consume over 70% of all CO2 emissions. So part of Greenprint will be really looking at how we rethink sustainable cities. But this just gives you an idea of, again, kooky artists thinking a little bit outside of the box. As we sit here and we know renewables cost more than oil and gas, curbing climate change, according to the World Economic Forum, would cost about $700 billion annually. And I just decided, well, what else do we spend our money on? So I know for the radio audience, here are some things we spend our money on. If you add up the weight loss industry at $385 billion, combined with the bottled water industry, $400 billion, you've got $700 billion. If you add up narcotic drugs worldwide or meetings in the US, again, $700 billion, or cigarettes worldwide, 681. So maybe I can just frame it in a different way. We're spending the money every day. But basically what we're doing is we're spending our kids' futures. And again, the World Global Commission on the Economy and Climate basically has come out with a report that it could lead to better prosperity for us if we mitigated climate change. So, I'm going to go on because I'm probably running late now. I wanted to give you an idea, again, of the scale. According to Lester Brown, to protect biological diversity at its minimum would be about 31 billion annually, and that's less than what business entertainment in Japan spends. Not that I really know what business entertainment in Japan is, 35 million, other than that. Or if you went to, what we would do to really shore up biological diversity, 76 billion, ironically, it's less than what we spend on our pet industry. So again, it's about rethinking our priorities and maybe looking at this in a different light, knowing that we're spending the money it would take to turn this around every single day. And we're also looking at consumer habits, like eating meat, which is incredibly inefficient and takes a hell of a lot more land. Oops, did I say that on air? 2 to 5 times more grain is required. So we play a little. So we started playing with, okay, exactly how much acreage, water, food, and carbon comes out of different animals. I never would have known that a rabbit is incredibly efficient, whereas a lamb is as bad almost as an industrial cow. Lead it to its logical conclusion, you end up in bugs. There's the turkey. It's not so bad. Who would have guessed a rat consumes as much food as it does? And we get to bugs, and yes, the Western world doesn't really like eating bugs, though a lot of people eat them around the world. But what does eat insects? Free-range chickens. So there we are. 30 million tons of the global annual fish catch is ground up into fish meal and oil to feed farm fish, chickens, and pigs. Or as one scientist said, our chickens are beginning to taste like fish, and our fish are beginning to taste like chickens. So with the sense of humor, again, I've got some pet animals. Bluefin tuna, it is estimated that the species has dwindled to just 3.6% of its original population. The amount of food to feed the tuna that gets caught before it can reproduce, it's equivalent, I thought, to raising a tiger for food. And a scientist corrected me and said, no, 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 no. It's the thing that eats the tiger that you're actually eating. It is that much more demanding of the food in order to get that animal to market, so to speak. So please, Americans are the third top consumer of bluefin, Atlantic bluefin tuna after Japan and Spain. We could make a huge difference, and we could save a species. Or 25 cents a cup difference, coffee. It's the second most exported product after petroleum. Difference between shade-grown coffee and traditional coffee plantations is about 3 to 6, 7 times more species can live in a shade-grown organic plantation. So we just go through, and if you go to the What Is Missing website, it shows you things you can do, and it connects our actions with species that are at risk, like palm oil in Sumatra and the orangutan, which is one of the most endangered primates. So I'll leave you with this, and then I'll hop to Confluence. What is the largest irrigated crop grown in America? The American lawn. What I didn't know is more fuel is spilled refueling lawn equipment than was spilled at the Exxon Valdez annually. So we're doing this again every single day, and these are things we could all change. And it would make a huge difference in the amount of pesticides, fertilizers, and water. So we'll be partnering with a group called the Perfect Earth Society. This is giving half your yard back to nature. And then we'll be able to show you what you can do to make the rest of your lawn completely habitat-friendly, species-friendly, invite nature in, and get the toxins out of your lawn. So I'm just going to hop to Confluence. So these two projects, What Is Missing and Confluence, have in a way converged. When I was first asked by, I think, Jane Jacobson, who's sitting right in front of me, to get involved, I was literally about to launch Missing, and I was very committed. This was like 14 years ago. And I said, I've got my head around, and then up comes to my loft in New York, Jane with tribal elders of the Umatilla, the Nez Perce, the Chinook, and I understood and I wanted to be a part of it. So thank you for bringing me in. Lewis and Clark. I think one of the tribal elders said, Lewis and Clark did not come into an undiscovered land. We were here. Tell our story. And I said, I will, but I also want to make the ecology and the significant changes of the environment so much a part of the story too. So we started looking at the logical place to start, since this was Washington State, Oregon, where they ended at the Pacific. So we started with Cape Disappointment, kind of a sad little name for the Cape, but we won't go there. And this is what we were met with, and just remember what I said. Suburbia, parking lots, weird cultivated lawns where there should be grasslands, restroom facilities that are just so pretty to look at. You actually couldn't see the water. And we were able to convince the state parks that they didn't need that parking lot right there. Sorry, gonna get a little water here. And this is what the site facing the ocean looks today. What I was able to do at times was use Lewis and Clark's words as a perfect window to what a place looked like exactly 200 years ago. But with every site, we've been invited into these sites by the Native American tribe that calls it their home. This is the Chinook homeland, and through this process, we've tried to work with and incorporate some of the interactions in present day with these tribes into the work. So this is the amphitheater as it looks like today. There are two divergent paths at Cape D. One marks the entire journey written out by Lewis and Clark. We, in a way, know them as a book, if you've read their writings, and yet they give us this incredible glimpse of what a place was like in 1804. But what you also see as you now walk heading to the path that heads to the ocean, which was their goal, you'll realize you're walking through many people's homelands. You also know that they looked at, and in a way, scientific analysis of nature, mile marker, coordinates. It's an analytical way of looking at the world. Exactly 200 years to the day that Lewis and Clark arrived here, the Chinook tribe blessed and dedicated the site. They incited a poem, and every refrain was to nature, teach us and show us the way. So there are two divergent paths, and the path that literally follows the water's edge, the true water's edge, because when they built the jetty, all that land has been accreed. We got permission to put that poem into the oyster shell pathway that leads along the original water's edge to a private little totem circle, and we erected 7 driftwood columns. And in a way, the driftwood columns were sort of left, pushed up on shore, and so we resuscitated them. 7, because the directions in Native American mythology, the cardinal directions are 7, north, south, east, west, up, down, and in. And what I loved was the large kind of table in the center. We counted the rings on it. It's something like 230 years old. It's older, and it was there before Lewis and Clark. On the other side, the most amazing estuary, one could argue, in this country, the Columbia River estuary. You couldn't even see it. It was covered in asphalt, and the hedge went all the way down to the end. This is, again, what we were met with, a parking lot. So I really haven't been an artist. I think I'm a restroom designer and a parking lot repairer. Part of it is there's no way I would put one of my earthworks out in a park. What I did look at is the art is the place. As an artist, I would fail if you saw me there. I win if you don't see me at all and you can connect back to nature. So this is what it looks like today. And we were able to convince them through a transportation study that they didn't need to build the parking lot they were about to build. In fact, they could get rid of half of this parking lot. So, and then you take a path, and now you can sit overlooking the estuary. And yes, there is a quote by Lewis and Clark, paddled through this handsome bay. But then there's a footnote from Confluence, and it tells you exactly how important this bay is to the environmental ecosystem of this place. And again, Cape D was complicated. Sometimes you look at a site and it is such a mess, you kind of can't help but fix a little bit more. This is what we were met with, a rusty fish cutting sink. And I didn't know at the time that the creation myth of the Chinook is of cutting a salmon the wrong way. From the blood of the salmon springs an eagle. It flies to a mountain you can now see from this viewing platform. And when the egg hatches, the first tribe, the Chinook tribe, is born. So now as you cut your king salmon, you can read the creation myth of the Chinook and understand whose homeland you're in. There are 6 physical sites for Confluence. The 7th is a site that connects them all. It will be it's education, it's in the schools, it's also an online, it will be a virtual and real book, so that like Lewis and Clark, we'll understand it as well through a book. The second site is Sacagawea, 7 story circles. This was a critical training area for the tribes, and each circle, cut in basalt, tells you a little bit about the trade that went on around this site. Or yet another site critically important from an ecological point of view, as the Forest Service decided to blow the Sandy River Dam and let the river take its natural course. We created a bird blind that bears witness to the river finding its path. And in it we took all the species noted by Lewis and Clark, but we updated and we tell you what its environmental status is today. And that place, the Forest Service is completely reforesting. It was covered in blackberries. And now the bird blind is not just witnessing the river come back, but it's witnessing the forest to come back. The last 2 sites are Chief Timothy, which will be completed in the summer for the Nez Perce tribe. And when they bless the site, I don't know why, but every time we bless the site, an eagle flies overhead. And I said that at one point to, I think, Anton, and he said, of course. So during the ceremony, I always get this straight, the tribal elders faced east, and no one could pass behind them. The women faced north, and the men faced south. So literally inscribed in a stone outdoor amphitheater will be that story, and it commemorates that actual blessing ceremony, this amphitheater shape. So we call it the listening circle. And the final site, of which there are models in that corner you can take a look at, is Celilo, which when we started, we met with all the tribes that had a stake in it. And we were told, it's too painful a site. Please don't touch it. It might be 7 generations before we can face it. And I was fine with that. We'd propose something in paper, or we'd wait for them. We actually said, we do nothing, we'll wait. And if they're not ready, that we totally respect that. And I think about 3 to 5 years later, they asked if we would come back and take a look at Celilo. So we went back in, and this will be a journey, a kind of a journey of a memory. This is a park, and you will notice a parking lot in this drawing, which is half the length of what the former parking lot is. So yes, you bring me in to redesign your parking lots. And the Ark, which will be a wooden structure that is inspired by the historic fishing platforms that used to project out into the water, will tell you a story. It will tell you a story, first in geologic time, then in mythic time, then in accounts by Lewis and Clark. They barely made it over the falls. Then the interactions between the Westerners and the tribes, and then the decision by Army Corps to build the last dam, the Dales Dam on the Columbia, and the pleas of the tribes to not do this, their most sacred fishing site. And as Thomas said, it took 8 hours for the falls to disappear. So the text and history will go 2/3 up this simple wooden arched bridge. It will go silent till the very end, and then it will have one quote telling you what it used to sound like. So it's just called the Celilo Ark, and it will project out into now flat water. And this is sort of an image of what the falls used to look like. And again, I was incredulous that this was such a sacred space, and it was so powerful, and the water that flowed over here, again, more than at Niagara Falls, it was such a sacred space. There was a lot of talk that they had dynamited the falls, and it was destroyed. They did some x-rays, so the falls are still there. They're just hidden from view. So think water level. Water level is a little transmutable. So we can take a long-term view of that. So we'll also reveal in the plaza, the information plaza, a cut basalt topography of what's under the falls, as well as a pavilion with an open, skylit room where we want to collect stories, oral histories, so when you walk in there, you can listen to stories about what people remembered about this place. And that's the relationship of the Celilo Falls to the area we're working. I'm just going to end with some memories. We used to dip nets on 14-foot poles and fish so close to the water we had to tie ropes around our waist to make sure we weren't swept away if we got dragged in. The water was swift and the fish were bigger in those days. Celilo Falls submerged by construction of Dale's Dam. Biologist Harlan Holmes estimated that each dam built on the Columbia and Snake Rivers will kill 15% of juvenile salmon passing through. That's Keith Peterson in 1957. I have seen the salmon so numerous on the shoal water of the channel as to literally touch each other. It was utterly impossible to wade across without touching the fish. We all thought, like many farmers thought of their lands, that the soil was inexhaustible. So the belief was prevalent that the supply of fish would continue forever. The history of the salmon fishery has proven fallacy. That's Ezra Meeker in the 1950s. On March 10, 1957, the massive steel and concrete floodgates of newly completed the Dales Dam on the Columbia River are closed, and within hours, Celilo Falls, approximately 13 miles upstream, disappears beneath the rising waters.
Celilo Falls was the centralized area of the region where all the tribes gathered, all their cultural activities. It was a huge business, industry here of the tribes.
The Columbia is one of America's great and useful rivers. In some places, the river is so dangerous that even shallow draft boats cannot navigate. Indians find good salmon fishing in the rapids. They have a special treaty with the government which lets them fish here at Celilo Falls the whole year round. During the canning season, the Indians sell the fish to canneries, while at other times of the year they fish only for their own food. And they do catch many salmon.
I think there was a channel that came up in here, and then the falls, and then islands were out there as well. And then they had cable cars that connected the islands that the fishermen rode across on and then fished over there. It's hard to tell. You have to remember the bridge down there was kind of the marker.
So with that, I'd love to introduce Anton Minthorn, who is the chair of the board of Confluence, and also bring up Colin Fogarty, who's the executive director of Confluence. Thank you very much. Anton is going to say a few words about Celilo Falls, and then if there are questions for any of us, we'll take them.
One minute. My name is Anton Minthorn, and I come from the Umatilla Indian Reservation. And I am a former tribal councilman, chairman of the board of trustees. I've been in tribal council for 26 years. And a big issue all that time was the salmon fishery, the devastation of the salmon in the Columbia Basin. And the tribes took action around 1988 and restored salmon to the Umatilla River, salmon and water to the Umatilla River. But my point here is that the tribes in the Columbia River Basin are restoring salmon, and all tribes in the basin have fishery programs, and those fish are coming through the Columbia River today. They are coming through, and tribes are going back to establishing that economy. What you saw at Celilo, the picture of Celilo Falls, that was a major economic economy of the tribes, which was devastated by dams. But now we're bringing that back, we're restoring that, and I think that the Celilo project is going to show how we're recovering, how we're coming back with that. And also in the process, we redeveloped Celilo Village, and we just completed that in 2009. So things are really happening there. We're starting to restore the natural resources of the Columbia River Basin, and it passes by through the Columbia River Gorge and Celilo Village. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
We have run out of broadcast time for today, and we'll have to stop our program. As we close, please join me in thanking Maya Lin.